Hello, welcome everyone. I am Christine Salas. I'm the HTPA Community Director, and I want to welcome all of you to the HTPA Healer Development Series. And today's topic is on depression. We have an amazing panel today of two instructors that will share their knowledge, their skills, their expertise with you on working with clients with depression. A few things I want to mention before we get started. We are recording this event, so I ask that all of you listening in, please mute yourself. And the recording will be available on the HTPA member website. Usually takes us about a week or so to get that up. As far as questions, we'll save questions for the end, and I'll ask you all to put your questions into the chat box, and we will do our very best to get to as many of your questions as possible within the time that we have. And I now want to introduce our lovely panelists today. So we have Cindy Palajac. She has an honors in BA. She has a diploma in adult education. She's a Healing Touch certified practitioner and instructor, a sound healing practitioner, former president of Healing Touch Association of Canada. Healing Touch has transformed Cindy's life. It eliminated a stress response that had bothered her every time she taught a workshop over a 10-year period. When Cindy took the Healing Touch Level 1 program in 1993, she learned how to balance her energy centers, calm her digestive system, and quiet her mind through meditation. This one course had such a dramatic impact on her life that she committed to learning more. Cindy became a practitioner in 1999 and an instructor in 2001. She now teaches levels 1 through 5 and the advanced practice of the Healing Touch program online for students in Canada and USA. So welcome, Cindy. So happy to have you here.
Yeah.
And then we have Maureen McCracken. She is a psychiatric and mental health clinical nurse specialist, board certified. She is also a Healing Touch certified practitioner and instructor. Maureen has been in private practice since 1987 and has been actively learning ways to tap into other related areas that she can share with her clients and students. She has 28 years of experience as Healing Touch practitioner and instructor, and 44 years of experience as a certified psychiatric nurse and psychotherapist in private and public practice. She has also been a national speaker on alternative and traditional topics on radio, TV, and professional conferences. Welcome, Maureen. So happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I'd like you both to first start by just sharing maybe a little bit more about yourself and especially your experience in working with clients with depression. So I will start with you, Cindy.
All right. Yeah, when I work with clients that have depression, it can be from grief from losing someone, or whether it's a spouse or it's miscarriage. It can be a job loss, even though they were totally competent in their job, but they were fired for somebody that they could hire at a lower price, or they or a move, like just moving and those challenges. And so they come having tried other modalities and hearing about Healing Touch and the spirituality of it, and wanting to feel whole again and wanting to feel more aligned and imbalanced. And so I found that Healing Touch has been very powerful in helping people to come back to being in balance, to learning some tools so that that energy that they're feeling that's blocked or congested, that it can move through their body and become, there can be more flow. And Healing Touch gives people hope, gives them hope that there's something that will help move them through this abyss that they're in. And it gives them a tool that they can use for the rest of their life. So usually my clients come for 2 to 3 months. The longest I've had somebody that's been dealing with depression, and it was related to eating disorder, was a year. And the person was 65. So it was a quite amazing case. And at the end of the year, she was ready to make the change and shifts that she needed to come out of the depression, face what was her challenge, and she successfully was able to transition to having normal eating patterns. So I've been having clients full-time since 2006 and teaching for the last 20 years. So, I see a variety of clients, and it's very heartwarming when we are able to help them with the tools that we have from Healing Touch.
Great, thank you. And Maureen, if you want to share your experience.
Sounds great. I'd like to talk to you more often, Cindy.
I know.
About your clients. So I am indeed a psychiatric mental health clinical nurse specialist, board certified by the American Nurses Credentialing Center, which is the same credentialing center as we have for our Healing Touch curriculum. And I was part of the legislative group that made that happen for psychiatric nurses advanced practice to be able to practice independently in the state of Virginia, to be licensed and to practice independently without MD supervision, and also to be reimbursed by insurance companies the same as any other mental health professional. So that was a big experience. And I did that for my son so that I could work part-time and be available to him too. Well, that soon rolled out of control with Healing Touch program. But anyway, I'm glad that I did it. Got so busy. So I have been teaching levels 1 through 5, less in the last year or two due to COVID. I am in private practice in the Reston Herndon area near Dulles Airport near Washington, D.C. In the past, I have worked also, in addition to teaching Healing Touch. When I became divorced, I needed to also have benefits, et cetera. And I worked for the National Institutes of Health, for Kaiser Permanente, and for the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board as a case manager and mental health therapist. I'm now part-time retired. I was retired for a while, but then people started calling me and I thought I would do it, and I enjoyed doing it. So I'm doing mostly Healing Touch now. And I do combine my psychotherapy skills with Healing Touch. And so therefore I maintain my malpractice insurance and licensure as an advanced practice nurse as well. So I really prefer coming from a Healing Touch perspective because it's innately more holistic and energetic, obviously. So there's a huge increase in anxiety and depression because of what we're going through as a planet, because of COVID, because of wildfires, because of wealth inequality, and that's the big picture. So yeah, and also war and everything that's happening. So most of my colleagues are busier than they ever have been before. So that's a little bit more about me, and I'm ready to go on to the next question.
Thank you, Maureen. So for our listeners, you can see how much experience we have here. And I'm looking forward to hearing both Cindy and Maureen kind of share their experience with us through some questions that I'll be asking them. So our first question is about, what an intake, assessment, energetic patterns, if any, that you find with clients with depression. And how about Maureen? I'll start off with you.
Well, I would like to start a little bit with the intake. It occurred to me after we talked about what I would say that not everybody might know what exactly are the symptoms of depression. So I thought I would just refer to the DSM-5, which is sort of the current Bible of the insurance company who reimburse, not us, the Healing Touch people, but the mental health people. So this is from major depression, and people can have less than this. They can have dysthymia, but anyway, the spectrum of depression includes these symptoms: feeling sad, empty or hopeless, or tearful, crying easily in children and adolescents, irritable mood, but also in adults. In other words, easily irritated or don't want to be bothered or don't like what you're saying. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day, either by subjective account or observation. Significant weight loss when not dieting, or weight gain, a change of more than 5% of body weight in a month, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. Insomnia or hypersomnia, in other words, sleeping too much, somebody in bed all day. Psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day, observable by others, not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, which may be delusional nearly every day, not merely self-reproach or guilt about being sick. Diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness nearly every day, either by subjective account or as observed by others. Recurrent thoughts of death, not just fear of dying. Recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. These symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And the episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or other medical condition. So that's major depression. And there are various, depression is a very multifactorial thing, and it can be caused by illness, or illness can be contributed to by depression. It isn't all figured out, but the nice thing about healing touch and energy healing is it can help it all without having to know the cause. That's the beauty of the energy healing, and anything that you do is going to make it better, some part better. And so most clients who come to me admit to having issues with depression, anxiety, and stress, but many of them come also with physical issues and have no complaints of anxiety or depression at all. And that doesn't mean that they don't have it. It can be that they have a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. In other words, their symptoms have morphed into physical illnesses. And there's a huge study called ACE study, which shows that people who have adverse childhood experiences, in other words, trauma as children, who haven't had it treated or processed it or expressed their feelings about it, tend to have more physical illnesses as adults. So a lot of people who are coming to you with physical symptoms have had many childhood adverse experiences, and unfortunately, maybe also then adult adverse experiences on top of it. So that's that. So a good book to read about this is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, if you want to understand about what happens to people who have had adverse childhood experiences. It's not good, but it happens to a lot of people. And Gabor Mate has written a lot of books and spoken a lot. You can find him on YouTube about how we need to heal PTSD, to heal the planet, because that's what's driving us all to our doom, dare I say. So, so as far as what I find when energetic patterns, usually, most often the people who come to me, most of their chakras are closed. And I've treated so many people. I don't see much variation on that. So I'll turn it over to Cindy for her.
Thanks, Maureen. That's great. Thanks for giving that depth. That's really powerful for all the participants on today. I thought I'd take the approach of looking at PEMS, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, as you're doing your intake. So physically, like Maureen has talked about, you know, their chakras are compromised. I usually find the root chakras, you know, they're not grounded, they're not connected to the earth, is usually compromised. And even if I open up the chakras, they'll often be very small and clockwise at the end, or if they're still ruminating, like, so mentally, they're ruminating about, you know, the negative things in their life, how life isn't working, they can't get out of this, then the chakras can be closed again, even though you've done a beautiful treatment. So don't take it on as you. I will ask the client, what were you thinking while I was doing the treatment? Like, did a negative thought come in because the chakras either went counterclockwise or closed down again? And you would, you know, your expectation or your hope would be that they'd all be open after the treatment. I also find they don't hold open between the treatments in the first 3 or 4. So I recommend that they come once a week for 3 or 4 weeks so that they can actually hold their chakras open between treatments. The energy field also will be close to the body. It's not going to be out 4 or 5 feet. It's going to be very close to the body because they're contracted and they're gone within. And often you won't even see it at the feet. Like they won't even be connected to the earth. Emotionally, it's like what Maureen was saying. They feel sad, hopeless. They can't make a decision. They're unmotivated. It's a surprise they even came for a treatment because they could do that. But I try to find what is the predominant emotion? What is driving them? What is it? Is it the sadness, the hopelessness, brain fog? I can't make a decision. Or is it that I'm unmotivated? I used to be motivated. So for example, if somebody's burnt out from work and then that burnout has caused them to go into depression and they're used to it, producing. The mental self-talk is key to just find out, how do they talk to themselves? Do they talk back to themselves? Which creates some humor with them when I say that comment. And, are they aware of affirmations and the power of the mind, and how is the mind and the body connected, and how powerful that is? And have they had an opportunity to read Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life? Will often help them around self-talk and affirmations. And then I ask them spiritually, do you feel like the universe or God, whatever is your connection, your spiritual connection, is not listening to them? Do you feel that you're not being heard? Do you feel like you've lost that connection? Or they'll say to me, say they're grieving after the loss of their spouse, they'll say, I just can't get a message. I just can't hear, that I'm being supported. And it's because they're so in their grief or their depression that they're not seeing the subtle things, like a friend sending a picture of seeing clouds in the shape of a heart. And I'll say, well, your spouse is speaking through other people until you can be in a better place to be able to see the messages that are coming. And so those are the main things that I see. And I just really look at physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually what's happening to them, so that I can then, when we talk about techniques, then I know what techniques are going to be best for that client. Because as Maureen said, there's so many different layers of depression. Somebody can come and say, I just don't feel like cleaning the house anymore, but they go to work every day. So that's called mask depression. And I actually experienced that 20 years ago when my daughter moved from London, Ontario to Chicago to live with my ex-husband. And it would just switch. It would switch every month. Like what I just did, I wouldn't do. I just didn't feel like doing it until I moved through that process, used the techniques, and found a reason to be happy with that change in my life, and that what was the possibility of visiting her in the great city of Chicago, which is a great city to visit. So we have a great relationship now, but I remember that as I wouldn't really be labeled as depressed, but there would be things I just wouldn't do, and it would alternate. So so that's how I look at for the intake.
Great, thank you. And I love that you mentioned, Cindy, about, a lot of times when people are depressed, it's difficult for them to even get out of bed, right? Sometimes and do things. And the fact that they made an appointment, they show up for the session, that's a big thing to point out, right? And what did they do to be able to do that, right? What drew them, and how can they then mirror that in other parts of their life, right? So I love that you mentioned that. So next, wanted to talk a little bit about the healing touch techniques, and are there certain ones that you're commonly using with clients with depression, and why? What's the rationale behind choosing those techniques? Why are you finding those more effective than others? And Cindy, if you want to start off with that one.
right, if they've been exposed to some energy healing techniques before, I'll start with the Hara alignment meditation because their Hara is often not connected to the earth. If they're new, I'll start with a chakra meditation just to allow them to get more relaxed and comfortable with the treatment. I love magnetic clearing to clear the field because I get a sense and a feel for what's in the field in the fields at all levels, like emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I will pick up a lot of information, and by doing that, it allows me to go deeper with the client once I start the chakra connection, which would be my next technique. And then I usually finish with mind clearing just to really balance the brain, the right and left brain, to create more cohesiveness. And I'll do affirmations while I'm holding the different points in the mind clearing. Also during magnetic clearing, I'll sense and feel if there's any leaks in the field, and then I will seal those leaks before I go into doing the chakra connection, because often when people are just depressed, there are energy leaks in the field.
Great, thank you. And Maureen, do you want to add to that?
That was very comprehensive. I'm not so complex. So as I said, I usually find the chakras are all closed. So naturally, I tend to do a chakra connection and make sure then that the chakras are then open and connected. And usually they are, very much so. And then I also do a mind clearing, which is very helpful for people not being able to concentrate, to have too much thinking going on, to have difficulty organizing their thoughts. And also it's deeply relaxing. It relaxes all the back muscles and really takes the person to a place called still point, which is in, they call that, I'm blocking on it. I know it perfectly well. Anyway, they just become deeply relaxed. I mean, when I get a session from Healing Touch, I feel like it's a big success if I don't remember where I am when I wake up. So it takes that great place, takes them to that great away place, usually. But the thing is, it varies with, what are the symptoms that they have and what do I find energetically? So that's what I do. There is no cookbook. And of course, it's intention over technique. But I find mind clearing for depression the best.
Great, thank you. And you both mentioned a little bit, or I know Cindy mentioned, a little bit about the frequency, especially when you first are seeing a client with depression. But Maureen, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, of, how often and how long are you typically seeing clients with depression? And, for how long, the duration of time that you're seeing them?
So that's going to vary completely with perhaps how deep the depression is and how they respond. So if I were to say, generally speaking, they ask me, how often should I see you? Excuse me. I forgot to say I was going to check out when I did. Once I said start out weekly and then maybe space out. But lately, I've seen more people weekly for longer. So it depends what progress they make, and we may have goals that we make together. So it depends when they reach the goals they want to reach. Sorry. That's all I have to say for the moment. Sorry.
Some water. We'll clear your throat. That's tough.
Maureen had mentioned before we started that she has a cough right now. So there might be times where she might have to leave us for a little bit until she can get over her cough. So Cindy, you had mentioned a little bit also about meeting, seeing your clients weekly for the first few weeks. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how often you're seeing your clients?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I'm asking them, I'm also finding out, how often this has happened for them, and setting up how frequently they want to come. My goal is once a week for 3 weeks, and then start to spread it out every 2 weeks. Again, it depends on their finances, their time, and their motivation. And then, some are more motivated than others. For example, if somebody's grieving deeply and the anniversary of the death of their spouse or their child is coming up, they're very motivated to come and do that work so that they can get through that event, because they know that it's stressful for them. Somebody that's on, say, burnout and they're off work for 3 months, they're getting paid they're still getting payment from their employer, then they will come, once a week for 3 weeks, and then every 2 weeks after that, until they feel they can hold the energy more. And then, and some will come for like 3 months, some 6 months. And I had one person for a whole year, but most people within 3 months, when they're practicing these techniques on a regular basis for themselves in between treatments, can find a new sense of hope and well-being that they move forward. It also depends on, you're going to be looking for, is this a repeat pattern? Are there triggers that all depends. They're coming just before Christmas, and then Christmas triggers them, and then they'll need more treatments after Christmas. So it depends how they react to holidays and anniversary dates, and how they're able to do the self-care between the treatments.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So as far as observations and evaluations, what are some common, observations and evaluations that you're finding with these types of clients? And I'll let you start, Cindy, until Maureen comes back.
Sure. Well, first of all, the chakras are closed, compromised, sorry. And the field is in close to the body. So using the pendulum, you notice right away. You can see in looking at the person that, if you can see auras, you can see that it just comes very close, and then when it expands, it goes out. If you can't, it's that you can, with your pendulum, sense, or your hand, sense where that is. So not connected to the earth. Their body posture is usually more, the shoulders rounded, looking down, not doing eye contact. And also observe, they're often angry at, how did this happen? Or why did this happen now? I don't understand. And underneath that anger is like the tip of the iceberg. So underneath it is, what is your fear? What is your resentment? If they've been fired for no cause, there's some resentment there. And if they had a spouse that died suddenly, like from 3 months from diagnosis to death, it's like, I'm really angry that this wasn't diagnosed sooner. I'm angry that there wasn't more help. And then for really deep depression, there's more anger at themselves, that why can't I just pull myself out of this? Why can't I just do 1, 2, 3 like I used to? Which then compromises the field, compromises the heart alignment and the chakras. So and I think Maureen mentioned that too, that she found this similar thing is you can really feel it and sense it in your hands, that there's a void or a coolness in the field, and that there's a lack of energy in each of the chakras.
Right. Thank you. And we'll come back to Maureen for if she has anything to add to that question. Next would be just about, client feedback and the results. What if there's some common client feedback that you're receiving when you're seeing these types of clients after one session or after, multiple sessions? And, are these, the other thing that I think is interesting sometimes is if there's been a change in their medication during the time that they're seeing you. So if there's anything you can share about that, Cindy, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. First of all, they feel heard. When you have an intake interview and you have a healing touch practitioner listening with 2 ears and 1 mouth and just really listening, they feel heard, and they often feel not heard. Like if the medical profession has just said, here, take a drug, and they haven't felt heard. When they're with us for an hour, they feel heard. In Ontario, you have 15 minutes with a physician and you can ask one thing, and now it's over the phone. So being heard, and that some of the reactions are normal, like for grief or a car accident, they've got a concussion, or a separation or a divorce or a job loss, that what they're feeling is normal. Brain fog, I'm crying all of a sudden, I forget where I'm going. That really legitimizes that they're not losing their mind. They're just, these are some physiological things that happen with depression. And that they, the feedback that I've gotten is like, I've got my life back. I've got some tools. I feel grounded and connected to the earth again, because I usually teach them the tree meditation. I know how to pull myself out of it sooner rather than later. And one person, she was supposed to go on Prozac, and I said, just give me 2 weeks working with you before you do that. And looked at her nutritional habit of eating at McDonald's. And this is a young woman of 30 eating at McDonald's, and that wasn't helping her. She was stressed out with her relationship, which was an online relationship. She had unresolved issues around sexual abuse from her childhood, that somebody had tried to connect with her, and so that she was dealing with that. And she eliminated once a week and thought that was normal. So pooping once a week is not normal. Twice a day is normal. And I said, let me help. If you can get your bowels moving and you can have a better perspective on life and practice these techniques to clear your mind, like mind clearing was the number one for her. I highly think that your psychologist is going to say you do not need Prozac. And that's what happened in 2 weeks. So that was kind of an amazing one. That was like 15 years ago with that client. That was an amazing thing to just, what's happening to their body, their eating habits, and their functions aren't moving properly. They're not getting their toxins out, which creates more congestion in the liver and the brain. So she is doing fine now, and she's doing energy work now, 15 years later.
Wow, amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. Welcome back, Maureen.
Thank you.
I did explain, that you might sometimes have to take a break with the coughing. I'm going to jump back to observations and evaluations, and allow you to add anything that you want to share regarding any observations or evaluations that are common that you're finding with these clients.
Yeah. Clients often feel much better after an initial session. They have an elevated feeling of well-being and reduced depression. And then some of them have not gotten on medication yet and don't get on it in the first place. Write my own notes here. So that's all you want to know about right now. Did you want to know about client feedback and results?
Yeah, or anything else about, your observations or evaluations.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's always amazing I've been doing this for so long, and it's always amazing to me, the responses that people have to Healing Touch. I had one woman come in, a lot of people are coming in with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's been going on for a long time, and they haven't been able, and they've been responding to their PTSD with grief without knowing it. And then they get irritable, and they almost behave like bipolar people. And so one woman came in, and I combined guided meditation, going to a safe place, and she came out and she let out some screams and expressions, and she said, well, what was that? And it was grief, and she had a lot of losses, and she hadn't discussed those with me, and then she did, and it made a lot of sense. She just took 4 sessions. She's already much better. She teaches full-time in an international baccalaureate program. Anyway, it's really amazing to me how quickly people respond. So general observations, yeah, if they can get a good plan going and follow it, then they won't need to go on medication unless they have really gotten stuck. But even people who are stuck and are on medication, they can benefit tremendously and might be able to cut back.
Mhm. Great, thank you. So as far as plans, plans about referrals or growth work, self-care, which you both have talked about, follow-up treatment sessions. What can you share with us about that that's been common with your clients? And Maureen, how about you?
Okay. I do make referrals to psychotherapists who may have a different type skill set than I do. Some people are better using things like EMDR, for example. I'm not so experienced in that, or I prefer to focus on the healing touch. Or OCD, for example, I don't have much experience in that. I would refer for medication if the person, after receiving some healing touch, was not able to get motivated to, for example, exercise, because having a plan to exercise is a good start on depression. People can start moving, then I think they have a much better chance of recovering from the depression. And a lot of times they're, in bed, or just a lot of people have a hard time getting moving who don't admit to good depression. So I use motivational interviewing. In other words, I use more questions than answers. I don't give them a recipe like what to do. I ask, what do you feel that would help you recover from this depression? Because they may have some ideas themselves, and their ideas are always the ones they're more likely to follow than whatever I spoon feed them. So and we do discuss self-care and what the client does. And we decide how often the client may come or space it out. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I plans.
Great. I love that you mentioned about the motivational interviewing and more asking questions about what are their goals, right? What do they think will be helpful for them? So much more powerful, right? When they come up with their own solutions and their own plans than us just kind of giving them a list of things to do, which honestly I find can be overwhelming, right? And so I find it's like, let's choose one thing, for you to focus on between now and then, and not like a whole list of things. It's when we have too much to do, we don't want to do any of it, right? So yeah. So
and if I may be so bold, this is one of my, as a level 4 and 5 instructor, this is part of our case management, is to not be telling them what to do, but to empower them to think of their own things that they could do, so that they're not dependent and they have a mind of their own going in the right direction for them. So that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. Great. And Cindy, what do you want to add to that?
I would also ditto to what's one thing that you're willing to do in the next week, and out of this session, what was most beneficial, because it could be different than what I think. And I tend to overgive so that they can pick and choose. And so it's always interesting to see what stood out for them, to really ask them that question. What stood out for you today in this session that you're willing to take going forward? And then one of the things I'll ask them to do is make a joy list of, what are your joy bubbles? What things used to bring you joy? Where has joy been in your life before? Physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? What has lifted you up before? Is it music? I used to teach fitness classes in the 80s. So putting music on is good for me. Somebody else, it could be gardening. It could be reading a book or getting a hug from a close friend. And so I'll do that. And then I'll refer, like Maureen, I have a psychotherapist in the area who also does sound healing. So she has Tibetan bowls and crystal bowls, and she'll do that with them, especially if they have PTSD. That's her specialty and what she works with. And then I also have an educational kinesiologist who muscle tests to bring the alignment of the brain back into better balance with the body. And she's been very helpful, especially if people have had a concussion, is how can the brain work again with the body and doing that. So those two are probably my go-tos for referrals. And I find the list and really just asking what's one thing you're ready to do. because that one thing will build on another, which will build on another.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And how about, you both have kind of shared already some success stories. Is there any other success stories in particular that you want to share? How about you, Cindy?
Well, one I'd like to share is a client that came to me last September who is suffering from a lot of pain from a work incident. She worked with developmentally handicapped adults, and so was suffering from pain because her C6 and C7, the herniated disc, and she just lacked focus, and she was hyper. She couldn't sit still when we were on Zoom calls, and she took an introduction to Healing Touch, and then she took level 1, 2, and 3 from me, and she just settled down more and more and more. The more she practiced it, then she trained her teenage daughters. She has 2 teenage daughters. Her husband had died 6 months before she came suddenly of a heart attack, and so there was a whole adjustment in the whole family. And then this year she's actually helping and is a virtual helper on my classes, comes for regular treatments, and she met a new partner who's taken 2 levels of Healing Touch, and she's newly pregnant, and she could not get pregnant with her previous spouse of 10 years. So she just feels Healing Touch is opened up this whole world of pain management. So her partner does treatments on her, and it just takes the pain away. She gets this burning pain down her arms when you've had that kind of damage in the vertebral area. Happier. She can help her teenage daughters move through their grief, because they were packing up to move last weekend, and one daughter was crying about, the dad's clothes being passed on to somebody else. So she helped. She was present with them and just held that, container of love, and that she was able to keep a positive focus, to move from one place to the other, and that positive intent that she would find the right place. And she was living in a house that had mold in it, and she found a home on a farm with 70 acres, so they can be in nature and just be one with one with the earth, and stay grounded and continue their growth as a family, as a new family.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah,
Powerful.
amazing.
And that starts with one person sharing it with her. So that's somebody I trained 10 years ago, shared Healing Touch, gave her my number. It's everybody sharing with one person can create that difference. We can make that difference happen in the world. And that's a perfect example.
Yeah, beautiful. And how about you, Maureen? Any success stories you want to share with us?
I'm just glad I was invited on this panel with Cindy, so I could meet her finally. No, I did have some, but I don't think I have this coughing under control. So if I talk more,
Okay.
I'm gonna decline to share it this time.
Okay. And how about challenges? Any challenges that you have faced when working with clients with depression that you think would be helpful to share with our listeners?
I do have some of those. Let's see. Briefly, clients who think someone else is the problem, and that person is not coming in. Clients who came in because someone else wanted them to, although that can still turn out well. Clients who do not want to accept someone else paying for their treatment. Clients who are not open to change. If someone does not want treatment, don't give it to them. Everyone has their own journey. It's not our job to change people who don't want to change.
Yeah, very important to remember that. And how about you, Cindy? Challenges?
Yep, lots. Let me pick this one. The challenge is if somebody pays for them to come, and so they come out of duress, it was a male that was grieving the loss of his wife. He was still going to the cemetery 3 times a week to visit her. He was in a new relationship, and his new partner thought it would be great that he come and see me. And so when somebody comes, you know, in that first intake, are they really ready to have energy healing? Are they ready to make that change? And so I said, what would you like today? He goes, I don't know, you tell me. And I said, well, here's a list of mutual goals you could have. You know, is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it mental and spiritual? And he goes, I'm just an emotional wreck. Okay. You know, well, maybe I should just leave now. It's up to you whether you want to stay or to leave. And he chose to stay for the treatment. He never came back. I think the key, and what I've seen over the years, if somebody's paying for it and they're not appreciative of it, they haven't received it with an open heart, they've been told, they are not going to get the benefit of it. And they're going to be looking for you to prove your magic. And I don't do magic tricks, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not into magic, and I'm not a medium. So I'm just presenting. You know, I did get, you know, a message from his wife. He didn't believe it because he didn't believe this work. I said, she's here, she's present. You can go to the cemetery, but she's with you every day when you think of her. He was not open. The other challenges were people missing appointments and like last minute, even though you've said there's a 24-hour notice, please do that for me. And then I don't know if it's lack of motivation, but just wanting to stay on that hamster wheel of that, poor me, it's not going to work, I'm just always going to be depressed, versus just try, you know, experiment, play with affirmations, see if it will work for you. And you can only help people that are ready to be helped. And I think what I learned early on was, can you allow people to have their sacred journey? And that really played out for me for family members, because I was so gung-ho about this. They would all love this. Well, of course they didn't love it because it wasn't their path at the time. And it's been such a gift for me to just hold that presence of allow them to have their sacred journey. And when they're ready, they'll be ready.
Yeah, great. One thing that comes to mind for me sometimes, especially if someone's had the diagnosis of major depression, it's like that labeling that they do. And it's like they are the depression, and this is who I am, right? Like it's part of their identity, and they're holding on to that, which can be really hard, you know, to work through that, that you are not your depression, right? You are more than that. And so, yeah. Wonderful. So much great things that you both have shared. Anything else that I did not ask or that we didn't go over yet, that you think would be important to share with our listeners?
I think Maureen brought up that part about asking questions. Just keep asking questions and allow the client to come up with the answers. We can have great ideas. When the client speaks the answer, that, yeah, I'd be willing to do a self-mind clearing and practice that too. That's where you're aiming for. And in the Healing Touch program, we've used the clean language questions from David Grove, and I think they're beautiful, but they're all open-ended questions. You know, well, what would you like to have happen today? Is there anything else you'd like to share? You know, does anything make this better or worse? Is just keep asking questions and allow them, and then follow that question, with another question.
Yeah, very important. Right. Anything else, Maureen, that you wanted to share that we haven't gone over yet?
No, sorry.
Okay. No need to apologize. You've already shared a lot of great information.
I'm sure tomorrow I'll think of 1,000 things.
Great. Well, we will move on to questions, and I am seeing some in the chat, so I'm going to go find where they started and go through those. And as I'm trying to find where these questions started, I will share that, you know, both Maureen and Cindy are in the practitioner directory, right? So their contact information is there if you have a specific question or something after the session for them. Let's see. We have a question from Martha. She's saying, on our Healing Touch intake form, when asking them about physical, emotional, mental, spiritual scale, when the client asks, what's the difference between emotion and mental? What's a simple distinction to say? And so she's saying like mental is more in the mind and is emotional more in the heart, or what other suggestions you would have to explain that?
I would say what's their self-talk? What's the story they're telling themselves? And the emotional is their feelings. How are they feeling? You know, they'll say, my heart feels heavy. I feel sad. I feel all alone. I feel the weight of the world's on my shoulders.
Great. Let's see. Some of this was already answered. Someone's asking, do you do mind clearing first and then chakra connection, or vice versa?
I tend to do the chakra connection first and then the mind clearing. But I know people who do just a mind clearing immediately.
For me, it depends if they're talking a lot. And usually depressed people aren't talking a lot, but my clients that talk a lot, and I feel they're going to miss out on the relaxation of the chakra connection, I will start with mind clearing. I do, like Maureen, like to do full body technique before I do mind clearing. And it's when they're talking a lot or quickly that I want to get them more grounded in their body that I'll start with mind clearing.
Yeah, and I would agree if they're more anxious, right? The mind, I feel like starting with the mind clearing just kind of helps promote that relaxation right away, and get them to kind of relax, to then do the chakra connection. But again, it depends, right, on the person. I don't think there's a right or wrong, really, right? And as Maureen said earlier, it's intention more over technique, right? Let's see. Question for Cindy, when you were talking about saying affirmations during the session, are you saying the affirmations out loud or more just to yourself?
I'm saying them out loud if they're still awake. If they're snoring, I'll say it to myself. And it depends if I feel it out loud, because I want them to hear the words and know that this is something they can do for themselves. But if they are asleep and snoring, I'll just say them to myself. And then I have a stack of the affirmations from the Healing Touch store that I can give them afterwards, the bookmarks.
Okay. Yeah. And Julie was asking, you know, is there some examples of the affirmations that you can share?
I would like to add something about this affirmation situation. There's a book called Affirmations, not formations, but formations. And the technique is rather, again, this is about questions. So it has to do, again, this is maybe sort of a metaphysical motivational interviewing of yourself. So if you're complaining to yourself that your husband doesn't love you, then you ask yourself, why does my husband love me so much? Try it, see what happens. And there's it's a small book. I'm sorry, I can't remember the authors, but if you Google it, you'll come up with the book, Affirmations.
Great, thank you for that resource. And I love that. That seems a lot more powerful, right, than just saying my husband loves me.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Let's see, what else? Can you speak to the differences energetically and treatment wise between depression and grief?
so similar. Grief to me is more an overwhelming sadness and I feel it in the energy field. And I remember my first healing touch treatment that my grandfather had died. He was 90, and I couldn't exercise the grief out, but that hands in motion just really moved the grief. But I felt it in the field. Whereas depression is more their self-talk, and for me, and their and so that when I'm doing mind clearing, it'll feel there's not a beat, there's not a pulse between the right and the left brain when I'm holding them. I don't feel a rhythm. It's just like clunk, 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 or even the front and the back. It's like it doesn't feel like a pathway movement, and it takes a while to get that pathway and movement going. Whereas somebody who's healthy, it's like it flows back and forth, and all of a sudden it goes into an infinity symbol for me. So I feel it in the brain that way, and I feel depression in the root chakra of like an emptiness and a lack of energy, like a coolness and an emptiness that needs to be supported. Maureen, do you have some ideas there?
Again, I feel that we're verging a little bit in the direction of cookbook, and each case is different. And I'm remembering a case of a lady who had her son had been killed and his head had been torn off. And she came, and the intention was that I would do for her, I was going to do EMDR to get past this trauma. Didn't work. Did healing touch. It worked. And I don't even remember what I did, and I don't think it mattered. I don't think it matters. You do what the field indicates and work towards what the client's goal is. So, but I like what you said, Cindy, and I admire it. But that's my opinion.
Well, absolutely. Every client is different, and every session is different. You cannot plan it ahead of time. I had somebody coming for an ionic foot bath. This is like 10 years ago, and the machine would not work. I said, "What is going on?" She said to me, "I just found out my best girlfriend has 4-stage cancer, and she is breast cancer, and she's not going to survive." I said, "Well, then you need to get on the table, because this machine isn't going to work because you're so emotionally distraught." And so the best laid plans can be put aside because of their drive from their home or their work to you. Something changes in their life. And I think that's the best we can do, is be present for that client where they are that day, and what are they speaking to? What is their intention for the treatment, and what's calling them to be addressed? What's willing and ready to be addressed that day?
Yeah, and setting that intention, right? That the healing energy go wherever it is needed most for their highest good. And sometimes that might not have been what our plan was, or what their plan was, right? There's just that magic that happens during the session when they're on the table.
Yes.
Someone else is asking, what self-care do you use for yourself?
Oh, for myself is heart alignment, meditation, drumming. I walk every day. I do stretching every day, yoga. I'm a big self-care individual because I taught fitness classes for 10 years in the 80s. Movement is really huge. But when I was introduced to Healing Touch, it was at a time in my life where the fitness wasn't helping with the grief. And so the blend of the two together work really well. And then, the middle of the afternoon, I can stop, get on my table, and do mind clearing to clear my mind of being on the computer for too long.
Great. Oh, I see Maureen is back. Maureen, do you want to share self-care?
Self-cares.
That you do for yourself.
For myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I wanted to share was regarding grief and depression. I worked at NIH for a long time in the mental health nursing service, and so I read a lot of articles about depression and grief, and I myself have experienced a lot of grief and depression. And there was an article I read that said that there's actually a type of person who, when they experience grief, it turns into depression. So I think it's depression is very complex. We can't make it simple. And again, as I said in the beginning, that's the beautiful thing about energy work, is you address what's going on energetically. And you can transcend all of these complexities with what you can do with your light.
Great. Thanks for adding that. Anything you want to share about the self-care that you do for yourself, Maureen?
Oh, that I do for myself. Yes, I married a wonderful man who I'm going to give his nursing certificate to, who's bringing me a cough drop right now. And that's that. And also, yeah, I exercise, water aerobics 3 times a week, walk, get my knee replaced as necessary. I love to be in nature. Love to, I've got some COVID cats. I love to be with animals, and I love to visit my grandchildren. And what else? Take care of my cold, take showers, drink lots of fluids, and work on relationships, and work on eating well, and love myself as I am, which is significantly different from Madison Avenue stereotypes.
Yeah.
I might not be everything, but that's what I'm remembering right now.
Yeah, great. Someone was asking, I think it was you, Cindy, who had mentioned the tree meditation, and someone's just asking what is that?
The tree meditation we teach in level 1 of Healing Touch program, and it's in the manual, and it's about imagining that you are a tree. You're sending the roots down into the center of the earth from the soles of your feet, and reaching the branches from your shoulders up to the sky to connect heaven and earth. And I like to have people imagine just not only looking at their favorite tree, but imagine that you're inside that favorite tree. And what does it feel like? What's the strength that you gather from the trunk of that tree, from the branches that reach up to the sky to bring in the universal source energy, and from the roots that go down to Mother Earth and bring that grounded energy back up through the soles of your feet. And then feel the sap of the tree running through all the veins and arteries in the body to help the heart feel grounded to the earth and connected to the sky.
A wonderful tool to share with clients. And so someone had a follow-up question to that, is what tools do you give clients to help with depression in addition to the tree meditation?
Well, I always give them the self-mind clearing and self-chakra connection, to go in nature and hug a tree, to be outside to get fresh air, and to, who in their life can they talk to that they trust, to have, a meaningful relationship and feel connected to, that they could get hugs from too.
Right. And how about you, Maureen? Any specific tools that come to mind that you're giving clients with depression? I know we talked a lot about asking them, right, to come up with their own kind of plan.
Yeah, right.
But is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Oh, yeah, I like the hugging thing. Also working with animals or volunteering. People get a lot of benefit from volunteering.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're not socializing, it really gives them a boost to do something for people and see how that, it makes them feel good to see people benefit from what they do for them.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I saw you wrote in the chat a few other suggestions: exercise, journaling, socializing, dancing, dates with friends, music that is uplifting, meditation in some cases, finding non-toxic people to hang out with. Yeah, looking at their relationships. Great. Someone else is asking, have you used the body-centered interview as a technique, and what results have you encountered?
I haven't used that for specific depression, but more for when people had a lot of injuries to the body. So a client coming to me that was, he had 3 concussions from being beaten up outside a bar, and he also had played football, so he had lots of football injuries and that, and the body-centered interview worked really well to just determine how many injuries had been and then how to treat that individual. The body-centered interview is a great tool and technique. And if I was to use it, it'd be like 2 to 3 sessions into with the person. It wouldn't be the first thing I would do in the first meeting with them.
Great. How about you, Maureen?
I have used it several times, not a lot, but it has been useful in actually releasing trauma, emotional trauma.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just seeing a client a couple days ago, and it came to me of like, I feel like I should try the body-centered interview, and it was kind of because of the trauma that she's had, and that kind of came to me. So we haven't. It might be something we try the next session. I seeing. Let's see. What else? I love your comments in here, Maureen. Janet Menkins, better to do 1 or 2 techniques really well than too many techniques. Someone else was asking, do you do magnetic clearing before the chakra connection? Any thoughts on that?
I do, because I enjoy just sensing and feeling the energy field, and because I've taught fitness class and been very physical through my life, and my children have done sports, there's been a lot of sports injuries that I've had the opportunity to treat them, and that clearing the field right away could help the body to come more into balance before I went to do the deeper work of the chakra connection. And that's just a personal preference that's worked for me because the type of clients that I see on a regular basis. And also it's been beneficial for me. Like I had a concussion 5 years ago, and I'll be honest that the more work I had done in the field was beneficial than right on my body right after the concussion. There's too much pain and sensitivity. And that we actually had a practice group the day after I fell and hit my head, and they did magnetic clearing on the front and the back of my body. And it took the size of it was like the size of a tennis ball, the bump on the back of my head. They took it down to like a golf ball size.
Amazing. Great. Let's see what else. I loved someone's comment about, doing the body-centered interview, doing it after you've seen a client for a few times. Yeah, I think that's when I've used it too, after I've been with a client for a few times. Let's see. Do you have any specific toolbox for self-care? Do you do recordings, etc.?
I encourage my client, I have recordings for meditations and that, but I encourage them to do it for themselves, to hear their own voice. For any meditation, the guided meditations are helpful, and that, yes, it's nice for them to listen to my voice, but I think their body really likes to listen to your own voice. And as weird as it sounds, that when I did my own meditation CDs and I like put them in the car, because I do 5-minute ones to just kind of ground me in that, is like, oh, I kind of like hearing my voice. I thought it was the weirdest thing, but there was a calming impact on my internal being.
Your own best mom.
Let's see. I think this was what you mentioned, Cindy, clean language. Mm-hmm. Someone is asking, is it a book, or who's that by?
Oh, it's David Grove. I can put it in the he has since passed. And so I was just on the website. There's still an active website for Clean Language. And I'll put that in.
Great.
Yeah.
Lots of great resources you both have shared of books and different things. So we appreciate that. Let's see. Ines is asking, at what point do you work with a depressed client on the 5th, 6th, and 7th levels?
I'm thinking of that as more acute situations, and also disease-related depression. But there's no reason to not to work with it sooner. I guess I'm perceiving people who are depressed as kind of delicate, and but I think I have used it. I guess I perceive it as more powerful.
I like working in the 5th level, the etheric template, to just clear that's a physical duplicate, and to clear that energetic level. And it just really helps to create more balance in the body. And then I can really sense more any leaks in the field at that level too.
Well, also, yeah, if you do, yeah, recently I did work on a client with that, and I did the clearing and bouncing, and then mind clearing.
Okay. Oh, and I see Cindy wrote in, but I think it was just a direct message to me.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I'm going to copy and paste it to everyone. Okay, so that's regarding the clean language. And then she also put in the website. So I will send that to everyone. And then a last question we have here is that, have you ever had success using the chakra spread? Mm-hmm. Particularly with anxiety or depression. Any thoughts on that either of you have?
Well, absolutely. With the chakra spread, it's just, especially the clients coming saying, I'm ready to transition. It's been a year since my spouse died. It's just, I'm ready to move forward. Can you help me with this? What technique do you have? And it's such a spiritual experience. I've also combined it with the spiral meditation and then done the chakra spread. And then it's, opened up their heart, opened up their field, and then had them really affirm and set the intention of, that I'm ready and willing to transition to the next stage of my life, and ask them is there a color, is there a message while you're in this beautiful spiritual space?
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we got to all of the questions. So thank you so much to all of you for participating in today's event, and a very special heartfelt thank you to Maureen and Cindy for sharing their wisdom. And I know I certainly enjoyed hearing all that you had to share, and I trust that our HTPA members did as well. So thank you to you both for volunteering your time today and helping share your knowledge to help all of us with our practice. If you enjoyed this event or have suggestions, I would love to hear your feedback. I will copy and paste my email into the chat. The next Healer Development Series is going to be on trauma. And we have a wonderful panel of 5 panelists for that topic. And that'll be on Friday, December 3rd at 12:30 Central. I will send registration information through email. It will still remain a free event for HTPA members. And for this next one and moving forward, we'll be offering an option for non-HTPA members to pay a fee to attend these. And then finally, if you are a certified practitioner or instructor and are interested in being on a panel for a future Healer Development Series topic, please email me. I would love to hear from you. So again, thank you for being a part of today's event. And thank you to all of you for all the healing you bring to this world. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.